Hello and welcome to the new Nerve Centre. And because we're going to be talking about Donald Trump, we're broadcasting from an undisclosed location. Not for fear of reprisals, I mean, after all, would have they ever hurt anybody? But more for discretion, because we know he looks it. Now, one of the things about the president that I know that you've been worried about, and I can put your concerns to you straight away, is he did in fact win his seniors golf competition. He's participating in Florida over the weekend. And I know I've lost sleep about that. I'm sure you have too. However, the key point about that is that he was playing golf at the weekend rather than dealing with in any way, shape or form the turmoil that we've seen in stock markets in the days leading up to the weekend following his announcement of the application of global tariffs from the US. Now, I won't get into the weeds of how they've been calculated, the algebra and all the other things that go with it, which are utterly nonsensical. The important thing, though, is to point out that what was amazing about it was Trump's absolute level of indifference at the weekend. And in many ways, this is like a virus. And I thought this would be a really good way to metaphorically understand what's going on and to help us navigate the path ahead. Because we've experienced something very similar in markets, at least, as investors, during the outbreak of COVID. What you saw there is, as the news gathered of what was happening, markets fell precipitously. In fact, they fell faster in one day than they've done in 100 years, and faster than they have last week as well, if you want to put this in perspective. And they did that because investors were trying to figure out what are the implications of this virus for global trade, individual economies, and the money that the firms I'm invested in are going to make going forward. And you've had something very similar over the last week with the implication of these tariffs, underpinned again by the fact that how they've been arrived at is rather opaque, to be honest with you. Now, what you then saw is markets kind of then leveled out and then slowly began to recover over the following weeks, really as investors began to recognize that actually the world isn't coming to an end. We're not going to all end up next week living in a ditch eating grass. And whatever Trump decides to do with his tariffs, however he tries to restrict trade or take America in a protectionist position, or direction, excuse me, trade will go on. It will simply go on around the US. Now, in this context as well, you're starting to see something very similar start to happen. You may have noticed that Mark Carney, the president of Canada, is talking about a unilateral trade deal with Europe. Now, interestingly enough, Canada is part of the UK Commonwealth. So the UK coming off the back of that as well. The Commonwealth includes a huge number of other countries, and I'm thinking immediately about Australia. And Australia has very close ties with Japan. So you can immediately start to see that actually in very short order, a trading bloc might start to form of great significance. And if you take into account the Commonwealth, Japan, the UK and Europe, you've got something there which is about 45% of global GDP, which rivals the US. So again, you could see in very short order actually that mechanisms will come in place to accommodate the virus and that actually global trade will pick up. And investor confidence will come back and markets will then start to recover. Domestically, actually, this is potentially quite positive as well, because the UK economy has suffered as a result of Brexit, whichever side of you're on it, no judgments made, because of supply chain issues and friction across trade as goods are coming into and out of the UK from Europe. And if we have closer ties with Europe again, certainly in terms of trade, that can only be good for our economy, which is having a few problems as well because of the level of indebtedness that we've got in place from something done to our economy very similar to what Trump is doing by Liz Truss, but don't get me on that particular soapbox. Final point is for investors looking more to the medium term as well, whatever the intended consequence of these policies, and I'm not sure there is a great deal of intentional thought behind them, there are always going to be unforeseen consequences and externalities. Now, during COVID, for example, we saw that there were winners and there were losers. So companies that needed actually physical proximity didn't do so well, but a little company called Zoom, which facilitated communications when we were all locked up in our houses, did extraordinarily well. Another company called Netflix, which we all started watching because we had nothing else to do, did very, very well. And you're going to see something very similar coming out of this, and that will emerge over time. What does this all say to us as investors? It says we've been here before, and while our recency bias will tend to overestimate just how important today is, actually we're investing in the medium and the long term, and this will play out over time. This too will end. And what we need to do is simply be patient, bide our time, and allow our active management of the underlying investments to pick up on those winners and move away from the losers as the situation evolves and becomes clearer to us. But really just to underscore that I hope that's been helpful, and we'll keep you advised of all events as they unfold. As the president competes in more golf tournaments, we'll be sure to bring you those results and not leave you on tenterhooks. And on that note, we'll see you next time.